Savage CBD strives to help people by offering top quality, lab-tested, natural CBD at affordable pricing. And it really is affordable. Whether you're new to CBD or have been using it for years, you can always count on all-natural, hemp-derived CBD with the purest ingredients. Savage CBD carefully tests each batch to ensure quality, consistency, taste, and authenticity. They pride themselves on their transparency and believe that you should know exactly what goes into your favorite CBD products. With Savage CBD, you can choose from a range of premium CBD lotions, creams, tinctures, gummies, and so much more. When you look at their website, there are thousands of happy customers who've reported incredible results after using CBD to supplement their daily routine. Overall, Savage CBD's goal is to create the products that empower you to maintain your balanced lifestyle. Whether you need some extra shut-eye at night or you need to find some more calm throughout your day, you can count on Savage CBD to help you reach that goal.
And guys, just for listening to this podcast, you can save 20% on your first purchase of CBD when you use our code BRAD20. So go ahead, my friends, start your CBD journey with Savage, and they'll be there to support you with every step of the way. Simply visit savagecbd.com to redeem 20% off your first purchase of CBD by using code BRAD20 and see why thousands of people are using CBD. Now, Kelly, I've been a CBD user for a little while. I use it when I'm out on the disc golf course. It helps me relax. It's great with muscle aches and pains, and it's really kind of replaced ibuprofen for me. So anybody that's listening to this, guys, check out Savage CBD. We thank them for being a supporter of the Knoll Family Foundation, the Bradley's House podcast, and we hope you'll support them as well.
Hi, this is Eric Wilson, and you're listening to the Bradley's House podcast.
Nothing is impossible, but certain things are highly improbable. I don't think I'll meet your kind again, not in this lifetime.
Hey guys, thank you so much for dropping in. I'm Jarett Orr, she is Kelly Knoll, and this is Bradley's House podcast. Kelly, how you doing?
I'm doing really good. Thanks for asking, Jarett. I'm so excited about the episode today.
Oh my God, I'm always so excited, but today I'm like super excited. I can't wait for this episode, and anytime we get to record and chat and have some great guests on, I always get excited. So I'm super pumped up for today. But guys, before we get to our guest, just a reminder that Bradley's House podcast is brought to you by the Knoll Family Foundation and named in honor of their current project, Bradley's House, a 6-bed recovery facility for musicians struggling with addiction, regardless of their financial situation. We all know, sadly, Bradley lost his battle at 28 years young, but the Knoll family is still fighting the war on opioid addiction within the music industry. Join Papa Jim, Kelly Jacob, and the rest of the amazing Knoll Family Foundation board in this fight. You're going to find a link listed in the description of this show that will have additional information on the foundation and how you can be a part of this amazing cause. Your support is more than appreciated. It's a necessity to help Brad's family get this facility up and running, and we appreciate all of the supporters so far. Now, Kelly, we have an awesome guest lined up today. Like I said, I always get excited because we get to hang out and do the podcast and chat with some pretty interesting people. But today's guest, I'm super excited for. Kelly, who's our house guest today?
Well, today's guest was someone that has been on our list right from the very start, our wish list of guests, and I'm so stoked that it's finally happened. Today we have with us, and you'll have to bear with me because I have a little alliteration here. It just made me so happy. I was making my notes and I'm like, ooh, those all start with a P, and I'm easily amused. We have podcaster, professor, and producer, most notably of the Vans Warped Tour, Kevin Lyman, with us today. Kevin, thank you so much for being on the show.
Hello, Kelly. How are you tonight?
I'm good. I'm a ridiculous fan of alliteration, as you can see. Yeah. But there are so many things that you do, and I could have gone on forever describing it. It's amazing. I mean, I was doing a little research to know a bit more about what you've done besides the Warped Tour, obviously. And it's really incredible. You've had an amazing career. You've touched so many lives, and you continue to do such great things. What motivates you?
I'm not really sure. Sometimes that's asked to me often, like what motivates you? And I just think that I have been very fortunate in life, and I really was not trained in doing anything. Everything I've ever done has been learned on the spot. And every day I take it as, as an adventure. And I tell people all the time that the only thing I'm going to run out of is time. Time is the only thing you run out of if you're excited about life each day. And, I'm now just turned 60, which is kind of crazy because you're not allowed to turn 60 in the music industry. And, you always, I'm excited right now about this new chapter I have, but I always try to learn from the past, embrace the present, but look to the future too. And that's where I'm at right now in life.
Absolutely. You've got a great reputation in the industry, which is not always easy to do when you've been doing it as long as you have. And I think that it obviously has something to do with your character, clearly. And also just the fact that I think what you were saying, you've always sort of put first the priority, of creating a great event, but having fun. And it sounds like you figured out a real good balance between the two. Did that always come naturally for you?
Well, it is now, because I actually came up with this thing a while back. And I said, we need to come up with 3 words that describe yourself. And this came up about 20 years ago, 25 years ago. I sat there and what describes me? And I said it was music, philanthropy, and education. And I said, if I can thread everything I do, at least using parts of that in everything I do, then that's a great pathway through life. So actually tomorrow I start teaching a class. And one of the first things I will do is ask my students, what 3 words define you? Those words can change, but you have 3 words that define you now. And they'll have to introduce themselves to the class, not by their names, but by the 3 words that define them.
Ooh, I like that. Now, since you brought it up, you are an associate professor at USC's Thornton School of Music, correct?
Yeah, and that's the craziest thing. I think the funniest thing that ever happened in my life was we were just leaving an amphitheater from doing a show in Florida, and a lot of people were sitting on the bus and everyone's hanging out after a long day. My phone rings and I just hit speaker because it was hooked up to the Bluetooth in the bus. And the first time someone said, "Is this Professor Lyman?" I've never heard my friends laugh harder in their lives. And I think for the first year or so, I had a hard time with it, but I think I've kind of grown into that now. But it was, I was not planning on this as a pathway in life. They approached me, they recruited me to come. And I felt at this point, because, doing what I did was very physical. It was a lot of people ask, why are you winding that? I go, you don't realize what I put into that. Right. That I needed. It took so much energy that I was, it took me 2 months to recover, kind of, even though I was still doing things. I was tired. Yeah. I was thinking that now I get to work with, 100, 125 kids a year that I say, you can do good and do good business.
Absolutely.
Especially in punk rock, growing up in punk rock, I don't think, our community wouldn't allow you to take advantage of it. So I learned how to do good business, but not take advantage of a scene of music. I really don't think I ever did. Right. And being allowed, there's nothing wrong with thriving within that music as long as you give as much back as you take out.
That's key for sure. Does it feel like you're a part of the establishment, which seems like a very anti-punk ethos?
I've tested the limits, let's say. I think one of the big things I tested right away was I had a group of students that we were going to tackle something, and that was mental health. And to Linda Bennington, Chester Bennington's wife from Lincoln Park, who we lost at a young age also, approached me about doing a mental health festival. She wanted a tour because everyone comes to me when they want a tour.
Of course they do. They're no dummies.
I'm like, to Linda, I need to break. I've been on the road for 28 years between Lollapalooza and Warped Tour, and I want to teach and do this. But I have a group of students who mental health is a very important thing for young people. Maybe we could bridge this as a learning and what I used to do in my past life and still do. And we created the 320 Festival, which was in honor of Chester Bennington. That was his birthday. Right. And it was supposed to be a live event. Of course, I go to my friends now that own, LA Live and places where I've done shows. And they go, "Of course, Kevin, you don't want to pay rent." I go, "No, I'm doing good. You got to give it to us for free." And of course, they stepped up, AG and Lee Zeidman over there. And we had this big event planned. And this was in 2008. and 20, and we know what happened that year. And we had, Chris Martin from Coldplay going to play, Lindsey Sterling playing, all these people going to play at this event, promote mental health. We had 90 speakers coming, and the rug got pulled out, just like the world. The rug got pulled out.
Oh my gosh.
Our kickoff event was May 8th. We had Grandson, a great young artist that reminds me a lot of the bands that I toured with early in my Warped Tour days, come out, and we had Ken Jeong from Masked Singer as a co-host, all this craziness.
That's funny.
And that was March 8th, and by March 9th they were shutting down the campus. And I guess could have thrown the towel in, but I had to show these kids, like we did touring and what we did early in our lives. We persevere, we figure it out, and we pivoted to an online event where we were able to attract 124,000 people in 7 countries to learn about mental health and the issues surrounding mental health.
What an education for those kids too, just to see how you can shift on the fly, and because that's life. I mean, that happens all the time. Yeah,
and I think a lot of this inspiration, and I'm talking to you, Kelly, and I don't think I ever really got to sit was by witnessing and being around Brad as much as I was early in his career. And I wish I could have helped more. I don't know if I could have changed the outcome, but I didn't have the tools back then that I have now. So when I got that call from Mitch Alden and we lost Brad, it was one of my things, like, I'm going to learn as much as I can about these issues to maybe help someone else avoid them. And, I used to sit in a parking lot with Brad, and his son and my daughter are just very close in age.
Right, very.
And I can flash back to us discussing what it was going to be like to raising children in the rock and roll world. So one of Brad's legacies, I would say, was inspiring me to learn more so we could help others.
Oh God, that's incredible. That's really beautiful.
And and every time I do something, I think about him, and I think about what that period was, and I always say, Brad, he would have been that band that would have played Warped Tour every other year. I would have never gotten rid of him, no matter how big he was. He fit well in that parking lot. He loved the parking lots. And I in the 25th anniversary show on the beaches in New Jersey and San Francisco, I did flash on my mind that I wish he was there to be part of that.
Oh man.
Well, in all fairness, Warped Tour got pretty big too. So as big as Sublime got, I mean, you certainly grew that festival that it would have been growing with the bands and some of the bands that you've had in there in later years. I mean, it was a big deal.
But there was nothing to hold, that band's, their talent was, boundless. I just know that they would have been one of the biggest bands of this generation and maybe a couple other ones. The songwriting was so great. But, it has inspired me to be involved when we did, FEN, the Full Energy No Drugs. We created the app around to educate people in opioid education. And being on your show, I remember Brad had a really good friend who's involved with your foundation, who was one of the biggest pains in my ass.
I'm guessing you're talking about Todd Zalkins.
Yeah, he was such a pain in my ass. Like, I mean, I don't know, and I can always say that, and I say this sometimes. It's like me and Lou Dog had a bad relationship.
You're not the only one. We've heard that quite a bit.
But I had a golden retriever too, and but he came up to the house and told me about what you guys were doing with the Knoll Family Foundation a while back. I was so happy to hear, because I didn't know if he was going to make it through.
Yeah, it's a miracle that he did.
He did. It is.
Neither did he.
Yeah.
And now he's trying to do better in the world. So unfortunately, we lose people. For some of us, maybe to do better in the world.
Yeah, that's very true. That's a very good point. I was digging through some old stuff the other day, and I came across the Warped Tour program, I guess you'd call it, or flyer, whatever, from the year that Sublime played. Now, that was the first year, wasn't it?
Yeah, that was 1995, and I was trying to put this together in short notice, and I had to go to the people that kind of were my friends and trusted me, and the bands that you see on that flyer were the ones that I'd worked with in the clubs. I was with Golden Voice for 12 years before Warped Tour started. And how I became friends with Sublime and No Doubt and Osprey. We used to do college ski tours together.
Oh my
We used to
gosh.
drive all over the West and play these college shows, and it was Offspring, No Doubt, Sublime. It was like a kid. Can you imagine that package today?
Oh
Oh
my
my
gosh. I will
goodness.
tell you though, I feel less bad now after hearing, some of the stories from Warped Tour. You knew what you were getting yourself into. You'd already, you'd already been
Yeah,
in that van hanging out. So you
and
knew what you
it
were
is
signing up
kind of
for.
it is notorious. A lot of people say I kicked them off the tour. Um, I never kicked them off the tour. I sent them home because my life was on the line at that point. I
Right.
risked everything in my life to get that tour off the road financially and the security of my family. And that band was taking 60 to 80% of my time every day to deal with.
Oh my
And
gosh. I'm so
and I just
sorry.
never forget the day I sent them home was I told them no dogs and no friends. That was my
Yeah.
rule with them.
Uh-oh.
And they brought the dog and friends out to
Yeah.
Asbury Park. And that night there was a bar, and it was like a gay cowboy bar behind a stone pony. And before I knew it, the dog had bit two people in the bar.
Oh my
And then
gosh.
the next morning we went to Buffalo, and he bit someone. And I saw Brad walking. I go, Brad, this is crazy. I can't have this dog biting people. And he looks at me and goes, he hates skateboarders. I'm like,
So
we're on an
Yes.
effing skateboard tour.
naturally.
And then I was like, all right, if I see your friends and your dog tomorrow, that's it. I don't know what I'm going to do, but I have to do something. And we
Mm.
went to Nassau Coliseum, and we were playing the little corner of the grass parking lot. We played there later in the years where we couldn't even park 5 buses on that spot.
Oh
And I
gosh.
walked downstairs in the morning, and we had a little bit of catering. There wasn't much around. And there's their friends eating one box of cereal, and there's Lou Dog eating out of a salad bowl the other box. And they split the 1/2 gallon of milk.
Oh my
And
god.
I said, I don't know what I'm gonna. You got to get out of it. You got to go home. But I didn't kick them off. I told them they could meet me back in Seattle, but they
A
weren't allowed.
hiatus.
I said they can come back to Bumbershoot. And we were in New York. And literally, I kicked them off, I think, one show. That's how far we used to have to drive. We had like one show between New York and Seattle, like Milwaukee or something. And they did come back and finish the tour. They did come
I
back.
think
Yeah.
I think saying that they got kicked off the Warp Tour is a lot more punk rock though.
Oh,
It gives them more cred.
Oh yeah, people come up to me all the time and go, "Dude, I got kicked off the Warped Tour." I'm like, "What?" If I remember correctly, your bus broke down for 3 days. You couldn't catch up with the Warped Tour. But we all built. There was punk rock credibility.
Right.
Punk rock. A lot of the punk rock stories, they are your own stories, and they may not match up with the reality or someone else's story. But that's what makes punk rock in a way, and that's what makes history.
Absolutely. Now, I'm sure you've told the story a million times, but for people who don't know, can you just give us a brief history of how the Warped Tour came about?
Well, it was. I've been working in the clubs of Los Angeles for 12, 13 years already. Running 320 shows a year for Golden Voice.
Wow.
And Golden Voice, was doing these shows, but I was also kind of bridging that world of action sports. And
Right.
when we would go out and do these events for charity, board aid, boarding for breast cancer, and some of these events, we would have bands play, and I would help maybe book the bands, and we'd build a skate ramp, and we would do a board across, and we were blending action sports and music. Golden Voice was trying to do, and Sublime was on these shows, the board in OC show and the board in the South Bay show. And I was just looking at it going, well, we had heard about the X Games. And I go, I need to go do this before I'm working for someone else doing it.
Mm-hmm.
So that was literally 95. I was going to do it 1 year. And really in a hurry was going to go. I decided this in late March, and we were on the road by August. So
Wow.
I had to go to bands, maybe some bands that no one else would work with, it gave them an opportunity. Other bands, No Doubt, was on parts of that tour. I had friends on the East Coast, and we went out because it was about trying to team up and build a community.
Right.
Pull the community together, because I worked every night. So I saw that the same kids were coming to see, the grunge scene with bands like L7. There was Seaweed, the more indie rock scene. Sublime was the leaders of that surf punk kind of, reggae rock kind of scene.
Right.
And I was like, the kids are all the same. If you put them all in one place, maybe we could start playing bigger places together. And I pulled, really, I was allowed to fail. by making other people look good for so many years, by working my ass off and I worked as a first stage manager at Lollapalooza. I was allowed to fail, like so many first time festivals do or tours do. We went out there, it was an absolute failure. When you think about it. But people saw that it was different and that I wasn't trying to duplicate Lollapalooza or anything else. And they said, you know what? Kevin's put in his time. We see how hard he works, that he's out here working hard, that he's not, you know, he's in the middle of it. Let's give him a second chance. And I think what happened was those guys got home, you know, and the word spread that it was just a bunch of pirates going down the road and there was like no rules. We were breaking every rule there could be possibly on the road, you know. I think Eric got thrown in jail. Not Eric, Bud got thrown in jail.
Yeah.
2 times in 1 week, like 24-hour period in Florida. But we were always rolling along that they attracted other bands. Like, you know, of course, you know, Pennywise had their own reputation and no effects. And they all gave me a second chance.
Was there ever in those early days a thought that this was going to become such an iconic thing that it would become the longest running North American festival concert tour? I mean, that's crazy.
No, I mean, literally, really, each year was just by the skin of the teeth trying to figure it out. You know, then it almost collapsed under its own success when it started getting so big and there's so many bands wanting to be in part. And then I got really weird because people were telling me, if I don't get on your tour this summer, Kevin, they won't put out my record. So then it became like a different type of pressure. You had the kids wanting to see, you had the show, but then you had these people's lives. And I didn't want Warped Tour to like dictate anyone's potential for success in their career.
Right. That's heavy.
You know, when I ended it after 25 years, people would, you know, typically in our industry, everyone thinks it's about money. I'm like, no, there was 24 other reasons that I ended it. It took a big toll on me. My family who stuck with me, you know, my wife who probably should have thrown me on the street a few times. I had the right to. My kids, you know, who did get a chance to go and work on that tour with me, but it was just, I'd done everything I possibly could with that project. It was time to move on.
Yeah, I would imagine there's so much work that goes into just doing one music festival. I can't even imagine doing a whole tour of them across the country.
Yeah,
that just sounds crazy.
It was a lot. But it was great. You know, hey, I was able to do what I love. I love music. I still love music to this day. But you know, now I'm kind of can do it in a different way. I get to, you know, channel my energies through these students, and I'm watching them now. This is going into my 4th year of teaching, and I'm watching some of these people moving up within their companies and businesses with a little more conscientious thought that we're all humans and we're not just a commodity.
That's important. What do you teach there, by the way?
I'm teaching 5 classes.
Oh my goodness.
I'm teaching a graduate branding class, an undergraduate branding class. I'm teaching a class that's basically like a philanthropic thought and entertainment class. I've got a basic touring class, and then I've got this festival design and management class, which has really been interesting to teach over the last year and a half. So,
oh gosh.
So I've got 5 classes I'm teaching starting tomorrow.
That's a lot.
It is.
Did you say festival design and management? I feel like they made that class for you to teach.
Right?
I can't imagine if you weren't the professor who would be explaining that.
It's now become a regular class. It is a pretty popular class. I get a lot of my students to get out and work shows, and I'm doing an event right now that's a Recovery Out Loud, an event up in Las Vegas coming up at the end of September. And Macklemore's playing and a few other people. It's a recovery event, and I'll have some of my students come up and get to work on that event with me. So it's a lot of fun.
When is that event?
It's September 27th. It'll be in Las Vegas at the Westgate Theater.
Awesome. We'll make sure to promote that. That sounds really cool.
Yeah, it's like 350 leading organizations and groups in the recovery space will be there for a conference. And then we're doing a show that will be airing on iHeartRadio and YouTube on, I think, the 29th.
Fantastic. Now, does it seem like everything's all, you know, all ahead full with COVID now? Or, I mean, it just seems like there's such this weird, like, limbo period. Like some people are back to touring and other people are not. And I just saw the Pixies canceled their tour. How do you plan for stuff in this environment?
Well, we talked about that, and me and my wife were just talking about it before I jumped on with you guys. Isn't it strange that we always knew we had a split in this country, and we've been finding ways to try to heal it. We try to bring people together, and music brings people together in many ways. But we've now drawn the serious lines over a vaccine.
Crazy, isn't it?
It's crazy. I was
Yeah.
thinking of all the things that could have split this country, and we've chosen science and a vaccine. And it's kind of scary. I don't know if you could create something like Warped Tour now, because there'd be
Right.
too many outside influences, with unknowledgeable influences having impact on it without you allowing it to get off the ground. Yeah.
It seems to me that the whole vaccine thing, and this is clearly just my opinion, but it's almost like when you're in a bad relationship and you're just looking for things to nitpick about, like the lid off the toothpaste or something, like anything that will allow you to vent the frustration that you're feeling that's really over other things. And I feel like the polarization that's happened in this country over the last few years has just kind of been building, and this vaccine is just one way to sort of, to me, it's the lid on the toothpaste tube. Like, it's just something that people can argue about, and somehow try to, vent their frustration.
We're definitely all on edge.
Yeah.
Even people who feel that, I'm stable, I do all these things to stay, we're all on edge. The whole country's on edge. Just the littlest things can set people off. And I think, people prey on us for that. People prey on us. And, social media, we were talking about, Facebook should just go away. Like, if Mark Zuckerberg really cared about this country, he would shut it down for a year or 6 months.
Right.
Just shut it down. Like, pay his employees for 6 months, shut it down, figure out how you're going to bring it back, how you had hoped that it would bring people together and be a communicative tool, not a combative tool. We've turned social media into such a combative tool now.
Right.
And that's how we vent. I think it's almost like that teapot, like you said, steam blows off.
Yeah.
I guess I'd been accused of that with my Twitter account sometimes. It's like, I don't know what to do. I'll just send this tweet out into space. Okay. And we have a lot of work to do, but that's how we did it with the bands, though, for so many years on tour. A lot of bands that came from different backgrounds and different worlds, you put them out in that Warped Tour parking lot, it broke down all the barriers amongst everyone.
Right. And I think that's a big part of what it did. And I think combining the music with the extreme sports and all that kind of stuff was just such a natural combination, that it just worked. Like, it just seemed so obvious. And the fact that nobody else had done it before, it was almost like, wow, where have you been all this time? It just really filled a need.
Well, for me, it was, I'd been working on other tours and worked with Lollapalooza. And I just thought, for one time, all these observations that I took from working those nights in the clubs, interacting with all these bands, how can we do something by maybe pulling all these thoughts together? And luckily enough, people thought it was unique enough to give me the second chance. And then it kept getting more and more chances. And then all of a sudden you look and 25 years was gone.
I feel like your approach to teaching now is very much the same as your approach when you started the Warped Tour. You're reading your audience. You're knowing what's going on out there. You're keeping an eye on how people are responding and what they want, and what's gonna be effective.
Well, I go in tomorrow, and this is how I'll tell you how I start my classes.
Okay.
I tell all my students, you obviously know how to learn if you're sitting here. Learning, you learn how to take tests, you learn how to do extracurricular, you do everything, but I don't think many of you know how to think.
Big difference.
I think we've sucked thinking out of society in so many ways, because all we're done is taught to test and taught to always someone else's standards. So I says, if you are going to go ahead, and then there's this thing called a rubric they use in schools.
Right.
When I started, someone asked me, do you have a rubric? I had to come home and ask my daughter.
What's a rubric?
What's a rubric? And I tell my students, my goal in life is to break the rubric. Because if you are going to achieve in life, you have to figure out how to break the norms.
Mm.
And we need to
Very
teach you
true.
how to break the rubric. And kids have a really hard time with it.
Yeah. Because they're
And
taught for so long to stay within the bounds of the rubric.
yeah, I said, I don't want to read what I might want to hear. I read what you
Mm.
want to think about and write and do as your projects. So we have a lot of fun. I'm a really horrible grader. I always tell kids it's going to be I'm the easiest grader. There's two things you don't want to do in life. One, you want to get your work in on time. I said, that's the biggest thing in the music industry, getting on time.
Right.
If you have a project, get it in on time. And two, don't tell me what I want to hear. Tell me what you want me to think or what you are thinking. And we have a really good time in class. I make them do TED Talks. It's just a different thing. But ultimately, most of them walk out and say, wow, that was a worthwhile class. It was taught totally different than anyone ever taught me in class, but I got a lot out of it.
That's huge. I think if more classes were like that in college, then it would be a much more beneficial experience for a lot of people.
And now with so many people who have decided not to go back to touring or going back to work in the business, I'm able to get a lot of kids jobs, which ultimately I think that's why parents send their kids to school. They want them to get a job.
Right. Sure. Were there ever any bands that you really wanted to have on Warped Tour that you weren't able to get?
Well, I was thinking recently I tried for Panic at the Disco a lot.
Oh, I love that.
Joe Strummer on the Mescaleros were supposed to be on Warped Tour. They were confirmed, but Joe passed away literally like a week after I confirmed him.
Oh,
I never got to tour with them. I would always try to get the Ramones to play the early records. I'd give them their own stage. I'd say, I'll give you your own stage. You could have the all Ramones all the time stage, because every one of them played in like different bands.
Right.
I said, you could play in your different bands all day long, but you have to give me 30 minutes of a Ramones set.
Of Ramones, yeah.
Ramones set. And then, sadly, as we lost them, that wasn't going to happen. I think I tried to get, Panic at the Disco didn't play Warped Tour. 21 Pilots didn't play Warped Tour. Avril Lavigne, I tried to get Warped Tour, but now all of a sudden she's a pop punk girl again. I hear her playing and I go, oh, you're perfect for Warped Tour now.
Is she back?
Yeah, she's back, but now she's playing with all these younger artists like Machine Gun Kelly, who was a hip hop artist on Warped Tour, and Travis Barker's leading that whole new scene.
Right.
So there's a whole movement, but we had a lot of people play Warped Tour, and I just wish, to be honest, I'm on your podcast. I wish Sublime could have played more. I wish they would have been out with me for a few more summers.
You and me both. Yeah. Definitely. So you also do some TV and film producing.
Oh, yeah. Don't stay out of that if you're in the industry. No, I did a really fun movie though. We did a really fun movie called Endless Bummer. And it was based on Endless Summer.
Sure.
Based on a stolen surfboard from Ventura, kind of a true story.
Oh my goodness.
My buddy JD, and we did this whole movie, and I had Joan Jett in it. I had Lee from Fear in it. I had Keith Morris from the Circle Jerks in it. I got Katy Perry, a song from Katy Perry for $500, a cover from her.
What?
We had all these people doing songs from the early 80s. So it was kind of doing this. It's a great soundtrack. If you could ever find it, it's called Endless Bummer. Sometimes it'll pop up on on XM radio on Faction. All of a sudden I turn it on, they're playing songs from that.
Oh my goodness. Please tell me the movie still exists.
Well, it was one of those things you learn only, like music industry is tough, film it. We sold the movie to National Lampoon. And they took the movie and they put some stupid edits in it. And literally the day we were supposed to, the guy that started National Lampoon went to jail.
Oh, oops.
So the movie's been like in purgatory for like 10, 15 years now. And I don't know if it'll ever see the light of day, but it's bouncing around. Once in a while, you'll see it pop up or someone will have a copy of it, but it was super fun. We got people, but to have all these kind of friends of mine in it, and the writing, we filmed it in Ventura on this, downtown. Anyone who spends any time in Ventura, they realize that, it was a lot like at Long Beach or Hermosa Beach. It had its own little community of people. So I've done a few things. We've had a couple TV shows. It's fun. I don't like to say no to anything. My tolerance for risk at this point in my life is becoming a little less because, our industry has no safety net behind it.
Right.
So I was lucky to be able to do certain things and save some money, but I'm teaching and working. And I feel that, a lot of people thought we pulled, semi trucks full of money out of the back end of Warped Tour, but at that ticket price, we never really did. And I still find myself working to this day.
Yeah. But, I have to say, I'm sure your students are super appreciative that you do.
Yeah, I'm enjoying it. I got to say, I'm a little like, I got to go lay out my clothes. First time in 18 months, I'm going to school. Remember when Mom used to lay your clothes out the first night to school?
Big day.
My wife's like, let's go see if you have anything that's not stained or wet or anything. She's like,
You gotta pack your peanut butter and jelly sandwich and your apple.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Do you think you'll ever do anything like Warped Tour again?
I don't think so. I might do, maybe there's a cruise. We did the Warped Tour cruise where we did it out on a cruise ship, and that was a lot of fun. Maybe there'll be a one-off somewhere. But I'm really enjoying producing these events for other people that are trying to do good and trying to get their messages out. I can use my knowledge that way. I had an event that I was going to be doing at Angel Stadium originally that was going to be a tribute to the scientists that created the vaccine. It's now been delayed for multiple reasons. But people are calling me, and if I can come in and use that knowledge I have, I love producing. I still love doing shows. I love walking around a parking lot or a field and, till your bones hurt and you just can't move anymore. I still want to do that, but I just don't think I could do a tour the way I would normally do it.
Yeah. Like I said, it sounds like such an extraordinary amount of work and energy, and I don't know how you did it for as long as you did. I think 25 years is very impressive.
Yeah. There's a point where it's getting harder and harder to get off that tour bus each day, but
Sure. Where did you grow up? What area are you from?
I grew up in Southern California. I grew up out in Claremont, California. So it was kind of a weird town. It was like this educational town with the Claremont colleges.
Right.
It was also a hippie town. So I learned a lot about the Grateful Dead and hanging out with those people, and used to sell egg rolls in the Grateful Dead parking lot and some of the people I knew out there. But then I also started gravitating to the punk scene. And I always say that punkers wore safety pins and, hippies wore patchouli. There wasn't a lot of difference between them. They both had things they wanted to change in the world that they weren't happy with. Yeah,
very true.
And I think I was able to blend that kind of, I don't want to say I turned all the punkers into hippies, but, by making the show in the daytime, made it a lot safer, bringing in all the nonprofits and all the things we used to do on Warped Tour. I learned a lot from being around that Claremont scene.
Right, I'm sure. And what did you get your degree in?
Well, my degree was in recreation administration. It pretty much allowed me to be the lifeguard at the pool in college.
Which,
well, that's important.
Yeah, I mean, somebody's got to do it.
Yeah, I mean, it fit me perfectly.
And that probably really did prepare you in some ways for the Warped Tour.
Technically, I was going to be running summer camps or youth programs.
It's about the same.
I think that's pretty much what Warped Tour was.
Well, it's got to be kind of mind-blowing when you sit back and think how many people look back on their youth, and the Warped Tour was such a big part of that, and so to have created something like that or been a part of building something like that has got to be really gratifying.
Well, it's always fun now that I've kind of bridged this world between kind of that corporate branding world. I, involved in St. Archer Brewery. I've had a hair dye company with Haley Williams from Paramore, or, I work with cities on events, and you'll be sitting in a meeting, and almost notoriously, someone will be like, and he'd be like in a, slacks, like chinos and a button-down shirt, and he'll go, hey, and he'll roll up his sleeve, and it'll be like a band tattoo of Pennywise. No effects. And they'll go, oh man, Warped Tour. Believe it or not, you kicked me out one time. And now it's like running cities and places. So, I get a lot of that. And that to me is the funniest, because to realize that, they still, they went to that event.
Yeah.
And it's funny, it goes away for a couple of years, and all the people you're always going to have people that hate you. You learn that not everyone's going to like you when you do anything in life. You'll have this podcast, and I'm sure someone's going to complain. Everyone's always got a problem with something. And I realized that you take something away for 2 years, and now everyone's like, where is it? Bring it back. We missed it. And I don't hear from the haters because they're all hating on something else now.
Right.
So
They've moved on.
they moved on.
That's how I feel about this. We did this album, Law Records put together this wonderful compilation of 55 different artists doing Sublime covers, all to benefit the foundation. And I've just been completely blown away by it. So just incredibly humbled that all these artists want to be a part of it. And every once in a while, I'll see some conversations on social media and people be like, how come so-and-so wasn't on there? I think they should have had more of this. And why wasn't there more of this? And I'm oh my gosh, seriously? That's what you take away from it?
I reconnected with Mark Lay. I hung out with him in Hawaii last year.
Oh, wow.
December. I guess I got reconnected with Mark Lay from Law Records. And next thing I know, he's like, I'm at the Four Seasons playing golf with him. Right? It's like,
wow.
He's, but funny how reconnecting now that these people have gone on to doing, more traditional jobs, but a lot of them say they picked up something out on that tour that stuck with them. The sense of community, the sense of supporting people, that ultimately, I have to make a bottom line, but that's not what I'm driven for every day of my life.
Mm-hmm. I think a lot of people probably pick that up off of the Warped Tour. And that's such a great thing, because especially in the entertainment industry, there tends to be so much focus on the bottom line and the dollar and all that. But you have such an opportunity to influence people. It's such a shame that more people don't take advantage of that, to have a positive influence.
And I think we're at a turning point on our industry right now. I think there's a lot of people questioning how they want to see the music industry moving forward. And there's a lot of upheaval. There's a lot of it, but there's a lot of change, and there's a lot of good people who want to get in this business. Because I always say, isn't it nice if you could just make a living in doing what you love? And a living isn't necessarily front row Laker tickets or the Hollywood Hills. Right. It's like maybe having a house, maybe being able to barbecue on the weekends and a vacation and raise a family and be around the music you love all the time. Not a bad way to live your life.
Exactly. You probably know one of our board members from your time with Golden Voice, Ken Denson.
Oh yes, Ken. Absolutely.
Yeah,
absolutely. I mean, I've known Ken a long time. Yeah.
I find that the industry is a very small world when you come right down to it.
Oh yeah. It's very strange. Maybe we have our pockets that worked in the kind of music we did, and there's like the hip hop has their community in the rock world, but you're really only one person separated from it.
Exactly, and especially in LA. I mean, there's so much overlap between genres and that kind of thing.
Oh yeah, I mean, yeah, it's still to this day. It's a small world.
Yeah. Now you've got 2 daughters, right?
I have 2 daughters. One of them kind of followed into the music industry. She probably right when the pandemic started, she worked there was nothing worse than rock and roll, but you throw cruise ship behind it.
Oh gosh.
She was doing the thematic cruises and now she was able to, I was having some health issues and she came to visit and we kept her here. Now she's working in the streaming world. She works for Veep. She does live streams and events. She's been very busy. And then you take the other side, as in every family. My daughter is a scientist. She's studies geology and earth sciences, and she wants to change the world that way.
Fabulous. That's really cool. Did they ever resent the time that Warped Tour took you away from them?
By the time they were 14, I don't think they did during the summer. They had a great time with my wife. My wife didn't come on the road. But then they both started touring with me when they were 14. And they worked. They had real jobs out there. Child labor laws, the statute of limitations, I think, on that. But they got up every morning and worked jobs out there. And
that's
to
great.
be honest, that's what probably kept the Warped Tour going at a certain point, because I wasn't touring with my peers anymore. My peers, all the older bands and skaters and everyone, they were doing other things, or the Warped Tour got too hard for them, Fat Mike. So, it was like, hot, long, too many shows in a row. And I understood people are in different spaces and different places. Sure. But I was not touring with my peers. I was like a mentor or a disciplinarian. That was pretty much what I was.
Right.
I was lonely out there at times. But then when my daughter started touring with me again, what a better way to get to know your kids in a hardworking environment like that. And to be honest, my mom would have been very proud that they were out on the road working as hard. And then,
Absolutely.
when Fran would tell me, she goes, I feel like they're safe out there. And who would think that a rock and roll tour was safe? She goes,
Right.
I know that they've got eyes on them from all the
Mm.
800, 900 people you have on the road.
Oh yeah.
They're growing up out there. They're dancing in a parking lot until 11. You wouldn't want your kids dancing in the middle of the street. We're having backyard, we're having dance parties, and but she knew they would be on a tour bus with me at bus call. Whatever
That's
that was.
awesome.
She didn't have to worry that they were out until 2 a.m.
Right. She knew where they were and who they were with. That's a big deal when you have teenagers.
Exactly. And what, you're gonna mess up, you're gonna mess with Lyman's kids? No, they had a lot of aunts, uncles, and cousins keeping an eye on them.
Oh, right. They were in good hands, I'm sure.
The worst was I think my older daughter, as she was getting, she was touring and she was starting to hit that 19, 20 years old. And we used to do the prom on Warped Tour where you got asked to the prom. We always do all these events
What?
backstage. And I gave the kid a lot of credit that asked my daughter to the prom.
Oh, that's cool.
Because as soon as it got known that Sierra had a date to the prom, that person was subject to a lot of hate.
Yeah, I was going to say,
checked out by
you
a
probably
lot of
took
the
some-
older crew guys, making sure that there was only good intentions.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, I'm sure he got grilled quite a bit, but obviously amazing experiences for them to be able to come up through
Oh,
that.
yeah.
Yeah. They learned hard to work.
I'm sure they did. Now, Kevin, you kind of mentioned it earlier, and to a lot of the Sublime fans, you're the guy that kicked Sublime off the Warped Tour, and you explained how that's not necessarily how it works. But you had also mentioned earlier that you knew them prior to the Warped Tour, and you did some shows with them. When somebody mentions Bradley Nowell, when you see a picture of him, you hear a song, what's the first thing that comes to your mind? Is there a specific story that sticks out from somebody that you knew and spent time with, not just a band that you employed?
He was very kind. He was a pained soul, but a very kind soul.
Yeah.
And when you can have those moments with him away from it, because I think there was also a bit of the show.
Yes, absolutely.
It's the same thing I see with other artists I know. When you get them away from on their own, and I would have those moments with them, you realize just really the sensitivity to them that probably allowed them to write the music they did.
Right.
The actual caring, but they didn't know how to put the show. As soon as anyone else would walk in the room, the show started.
Right.
And being able to separate yourself, I just don't think, I think the show overwhelms a lot. And it's overwhelmed a lot of musicians and artists and people who are in the limelight. But man, there was moments that we would just have little talks, but I'll never forget talking about raising our children in the music scene together and how important our kids were to us. They were just born, but how important they were going to be part of our lives. And I think ultimately, he knew that his worlds were so apart. How was he going to blend them together? And,
It's not easy.
And I imagine a lot of people struggle with that.
Absolutely. I mean, I can't say I didn't have struggles in different ways. You start to feel like people fill your head full of shit in this business. They fill it up because they're there. And, as my success, I guess, in a different way was growing, people filled my head with shit that it was like okay to do certain things that weren't part of me.
Yeah.
And when that's accepted behavior, you're lucky if you get out the other side.
Right. And a lot of people don't. Yeah.
Well, the wonderful thing is that young son that you were talking about, Jacob, has grown up to be an amazing man. He is. We've had him as a guest here on the show, and I don't know if you've had a chance to check out his band Law, but he's starting to make his own print on the music industry and doing it the way that he wants, and it's really cool to see.
Yeah, he's got a great voice and a lot of talent.
Absolutely. So all of those years of the Warped Tour, I guess this is kind of an insane question to ask, but I would be crazy not to. Is there a particular year that is your favorite? Is there one that sticks out? If you were gonna show a lineup or footage from one year to get somebody hooked on the Warped Tour, is there a particular year that really sticks out?
Oh gosh, that was always a question people would ask, and I'd always, to a point, I was always able to say next year. Next year is the one I'm looking for.
Right.
When I look back now, I look, at that first year as being completely crazy and talking to people now. But some of those times when we started to get to tour overseas, and the time we camped across Australia, where we slept in tents and little motorhomes. No one had ever done that. And we played all the little surf spots, and we had, Blink and Pennywise and the Vandals and 311 and all the Boss Tones and all these bands. And we were out there like on a camping trip together across Australia. That one was that tour, or going to tour Europe. And I was always trying to do it different. So we would play places like the Pamplona Bull Ring, or we were getting a tent within the big festivals and trying to prove that skateboarding and music were relevant when everyone was listening to Oasis and those Blur bands and the Toe Gazers. And here we are, this ska punk tour, and kids gravitated to what we were doing. Riding across, France and sitting and looking out over the countryside, for a kid that never had been out of the country. When I started Warped Tour, I didn't even have a passport, and being able to do it with all your friends. So those were pretty special times.
Yeah, that's amazing, the things that you've gotten to do. And I often say, it's funny, you said, we weren't backing trucks of money up after each show, especially not at the prices that you guys charged, because it was always an affordable ticket, no matter where it was or what city it was in. And you said, you still have to work to this day, but there comes a time where money it's not a thing anymore, and the only real currency you have are the memories and experiences that you've lived. And you will be a very, very wealthy man through your years. I can assure you that.
I have a lot of fun now. Finally got to go on my own vacation with my wife after 29 years this past summer. There was three Lollapaloozas, 25 Warped, one COVID summer, and we got to load up a Sprinter van and just drive around for 3 weeks around the country. And we both got home, and we were ready to turn around and go if we could right away again.
That's awesome.
So for somebody who's been so many bands, so much music, I mean, over 25 years, you've just been exposed to a ridiculous amount of awesome live music. But you said you and your wife were in the van, you're driving around the country. What's Kevin Lyman listening to these days?
Oh, it's crazy. There's so much music on, music on, you go down a rabbit hole now. I love to always, I have different playlists I put together, and I'm like, Road Trip 1, Road Trip Country, Road Trip Blues. And then, today I started a list. There was this artist named Lolo, a young female artist that I heard is opening for Less Than Jake and Newfound Glory. And I heard a song and I liked it. But then you just go down the rabbit hole, because you see her and then you go, artists that like her like this, and right. I start listening to them, and it's like 3 a.m, and I'm like down 27 different artists that I've never heard of. I mean, there's a lot of great talent. And what's really cool to me is there's so much really great up and coming female talent.
Absolutely.
It's so cool. But
yeah,
we listen to a little bit of everything. Like I'll be like, okay, we're going to go like through the punk rock 30 minutes. And then all of a sudden you go to Alicia Keys. And then, oh, wait, we're going like, through the desert. Oh, let's pretend like we're at Coachella for 30 minutes. Not a lot of EDM though. Unfortunately.
Now I kind of just want to go on a road trip with you just for the soundtrack. I promise. I'll sit in the back just as quiet as a church mouse. I'm interested in these changes. That's pretty awesome.
I'm sensing a satellite radio channel here, like Kevin's road trip playlists or something.
I'm learning how to enjoy music again for the sake of enjoying music versus listening to music to book music.
Right.
It got to the point where I was just listening to book versus enjoying. When you're trying to put together different tours, there was Warped, there was Mayhem, there was Taste of Chaos, and a country tour. So sometimes I was putting 2 or 3 tours together. All I was listening to was, would this fit into something I'm going to produce live?
Right.
Does this transfer live? Versus now, I can listen to anything I want. And I always had a
freeing
eclectic listening. And I think that eclectic listening taste came from working 320 nights a year in the clubs of Los Angeles. I was working all kinds of music. So now it's just a chance to get to listen to all different kinds again. but then I can never find it. Sometimes if I don't put it on a playlist, I'll never find the song again.
Do you have any favorite LA venues?
Oh gosh, I loved working at the Hollywood Palladium.
Mm.
There was a lot of venues that don't exist anymore, but we used to do the Variety Arts Center. I always loved to work down there. The Olympic Auditorium was always a wild place to work. Yeah, I was always some of those type of venues. It's interesting going back to places like the Whiskey and Roxy and not sitting there in a big blue smoke cloud, because we worked when smoking was allowed and you can actually breathe in those clubs. So it can be enjoyable to go see a show in there. But I do tell people, and since wear earplugs. I have a horrible case of tinnitus. I tell all my students, wear earplugs, because the live tour music experience for me has to be short burst now, because this ringing in the ears that just does not go away, that plays on you, not only, it plays on you mentally, especially late at night when you're laying there and here's your ears ringing, or someone says, oh, the ocean, hear the ocean. I'm like, nope, I can't hear the ocean. I hear this ringing. So I do tell everyone, wear earplugs. It's worth it. You can get great earplugs that don't, that dim the sound, but don't block it. But take care of your ears, because that's the only thing that after all these years, after almost 40 years in the music industry and around shows, I'm bummed, because going to live shows for me, I am missing out a little bit now because of that ringing.
Yeah. Wow. That's
good
advice.
If you want, we can run this back and edit it. You can say that you were wearing those 3M earplugs that there's that huge class action lawsuit against now, and maybe get you in on the action there. But
get my $3.20.
Right.
It's fun. I just saw the post again. I just saw the advertisement again today for the class action lawsuit for those little orange earplugs that they were selling that everyone claims don't work now. So yeah, if you play your cards right, you could have a $3.20 check coming your way.
Well, they obviously didn't work because I had them in my pocket. I don't think
they don't work there, do they?
It was hard to run shows with earplugs in when you were the one person having to try to talk and move around. So I don't know if I'd win any money because they were in my pocket most of the time.
Well, when I introduced you, I referred to you as a podcaster, professor, and producer. Tell us about your podcast.
Yeah, I think the podcast was spun out of my wife needing to get me back out of the house during the pandemic. I work out of my back garage. I teach 2 days a week, but I think I was driving her crazy. Absolutely. And she's like, look, if you're not going to sit there and finish that book that you've outlined a few times, go out there and start a podcast. It can't be that hard. Just go do a podcast. Oh, great. So now I work on this podcast all the time. It's called My Warped Life. And a lot of people think it's just about the Warped Tour, but it's more about my warped life or your warped life. I met so many people that live a warped life. And somehow have figured out how to navigate society outside the norms. They may not be real famous. They may be just people I've come across. And then you do have people like Steve Van Doren from Vans, or Bob Hurley, who started Hurley Clothing, but crossed paths with me through Billabong and supporting the Warped Tour. So it's called My Warped Life. We have a lot of fun with it. I have a partner, a guy who I met and now play golf with during the pandemic. That's the one of the few things you could do.
Right.
Who had not heard all these stories. So all of this is new to him. So he laughs at everything, which is great. You want one of those people that laughs at all this and doesn't really understand it. So we do My Warped Life, and we're having a fun time. It's, you can find it everywhere. I just did a great episode that I really enjoyed on Gary Tovar, the founder of Golden Voice. People really don't know where that company came from, and it's a great interview with Gary.
And that's the most recent episode, right?
That was the most recent episode, My Warped Life. So we're having everyone's got to have a podcast now, right? So
apparently.
Yeah, and they're so easy to do, as we all know how hard we work on them. But it is good, guys, for documenting some of these stories, because stories change over time, and we are not getting any younger.
Right. I think it's a great way to preserve that oral history, of these kinds of things. And I'm really glad that you're doing it, and hopefully our listeners will check that out, because that's a great idea.
And, my students, I tell them, if you want to hear some of the stories I can't say in class, you can go to the podcast.
It's a good advertisement. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, Kelly was super excited to do this podcast, and she sent me emails and hawked me for months. So finally I agreed to.
No. He's
No,
lying.
it was actually the exact opposite of that. But we've been having a real good time doing it as well. And like Kelly said, hopefully our listeners will check out your podcast. We'll include a link to your podcast in the description of the show. So you guys that are listening right now, just go ahead and click the little button on the description, and it'll take you right to Kevin's podcast, and you can hear more of the stories of his warped life, or maybe the warped life of his guests. But either way, it's a real fun listen. So, Kevin, I thought I was excited about having you on the podcast, and then after getting to chat with you and hear some of your stories and some of the things that you've done and why you've done them, I'm super excited now and grateful for this opportunity, and I think our listeners are really going to enjoy it as well. So, thank you for coming on and telling some stories and helping us entertain the listeners and the supporters of the Knoll Family Foundation.
Great. Thank you so much. And best of success with Bradley's House.
Thank you. It's been a real treat for us to have you. You are such an icon in the music industry, and I can't thank you enough for taking the time with us tonight. Thank you.
Thank you.
Whew. Well, Kelly, I don't know if a lot of people know the name Kevin Lyman, but certainly almost everybody knows the name Warped Tour. So to be able to talk to the man who started that and birthed that whole thing, that's a really cool experience for me because, especially in my age group, the Warped Tour was a big, big deal. So really cool to kind of hear how it all started. And this guy's a fucking college teacher now.
He's amazing. He's done so many things, and it's easy to see why he's been successful at all of them. He's an all-around great guy, has such a great perspective on things. I seriously could have talked to him for hours. That was really fun.
Yeah, I really appreciate him coming on and sharing some of his stories, and that he's another guy that like we barely scratched the surface.
Yes.
There's room for episode 2 for Mr. Lyman, 100%, and he's the kind of guy that I got a lot of time for. So look forward to down the road hearing a little bit more from him. Now, for all of our early birds, and I know a lot of you guys, I see the comments popping up quick. I know a lot of you listen to this show as soon as it drops. And Anna makes sure that it gets on there and it hits your phone, whether it's your iTunes, your Amazon, or even your YouTube. It pops up right at like 6 o'clock in the morning to let you know the show's ready. So if you are listening to this show on the day that it dropped, on the 29th, you guys still have time to get in on the auction. Kelly, you and the foundation work so hard. There are so many amazing items up for bid. And I know that you guys are probably a little overwhelmed with how fast this has all been happening, but you guys have time. You can hop on there right now and you can get your bids in until what time, Kelly?
Until 6 p.m. Pacific time, today, September 29th. And I am so excited. This auction has been amazing. The response has been incredible and overwhelming. And I'm so excited to see how everything finishes up tonight at 6 o'clock Pacific time. And thank you to everyone who's bid and everyone who's been a part of it and everyone who's shared the post and spread the word. This has been a really, really great event, and I'm looking forward to having another one.
Yeah, absolutely. And guys, if you're listening to this and for whatever reason you've missed the last few episodes or the auction has evaded you somehow, you guys still have a few hours to sneak in there. So there's people that have been bidding on stuff all week, making sure that they stayed on it. You can sneak in there right at the end and just take it all home right now. So go ahead and hop in there and check out some of those neat donations. And again, thank you to everybody that was included. Now, for those of you who maybe missed the auction or weren't able to participate, of course, you can always get awesome stuff right at the KnollFamilyFoundation.org. Just go ahead and hit that merch section, pick yourself out a t-shirt, maybe buy 7 or 8 for people for Christmas, whatever you got to do. Just know that it all goes directly to the Knoll Family Foundation and being able to get Bradley's House up and open and start to help these musicians. So again, guys, it's KnollFamilyFoundation.org. And of course, follow the Knoll Family Foundation on all platforms of social media. There's constantly awesome stuff going on. Shout out to Jen, who's just busting her ass to get these posts out and keep everything updated. Yeah, I know she's kind of your right hand on the social media end, and she just she does amazing work in the Bradley's House group and all over. So thanks, wonderful. Jen. We love you, and
love you, Jen.
And she's doing an amazing job. So make sure you guys are checking all of that out.
And of course, anybody who wants to hear more stories from Kevin should definitely check out his podcast, My Warped Life. It's available on almost all the streaming platforms. Definitely check that out. So we're so grateful to Kevin for taking the time and talking with us. We're also super grateful for our wonderful sponsor, Savage CBD. So awesome that they have stepped up and they're helping us by being a sponsor of the show, which again, just like all the things that everybody does, buying the merchandise and participating in the auction, all these things will take us one step closer to getting Bradley's house built. So big thanks to Savage CBD. Make sure you check out their products.
Kelly, each week we leave all of our guests, I say we leave with a smile, right? Because a song's always going to make you smile. You hear a great interview, and then we just kind of blast you out with an awesome song. And we're going to leave you with a smile today, but I decided to go ahead with something a little bit different than just playing a typical song. And a lot of that, obviously, is because we had Kevin on, and we talked about the Warped Tour. So hopped over to our friend Eddie Villa, his YouTube page. If you're a Sublime fan, you've seen one of Eddie's videos. He does amazing work and puts a lot of time into them. So we're going to go ahead and share an interview of Sublime. It's Brad, Bud, and Eric on the Warped Tour from MTV News. This was on August 11th, 1995. Hope you guys enjoy this interview. Thank you so much for joining us once again. I'm Jarett Orr. She's Kelly Noel. We're out of time. That means you don't have to go home, but it's time to leave Bradley's house.
No, smoke their brains out.
You might not be too bad with them because there's a man, so.
We got kids now.
Where's everybody going?
I think there's a small beer store.
Yeah, no shit.
7-Eleven.
Do they have a medical tent here at all?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, good. You probably need a heat exhaustion. All right, we ready to go?
All the rocks around.
Okay, so why did you guys decide to come on this tour?
Because we thought it was the best thing for us to do this summer. Pretty much the coolest thing to do. Yeah. We're out here with all the skaters and the BMXers. Yeah, hang out with Remy and Salba. Just cracking humongous airs every day. It's so killer. There's boys from our hometown, so it's a big party for us every day. It's like summer camp.
Yeah, you're with the other guys, like some California bands.
Yeah,
New York bands.
we came out here with Fluff and No Use for a Name.
You guys skate or biker?
We skate.
You did? You go out last night at all? I heard Orange on Millimeter went out last night.
What they go out and do? They went out in a big way. They went out already. They were up to about 6 in the morning somehow. Skating. They were partying.
So what is it like about this tour that makes it
They get a broad spectrum of bands, and they get to see a lot of the board sports going on, and it's just like all the big underground scene. I mean, anytime you get like the BMXers and the skaters and stuff, it's like all about that underground scene. The guy put it on, Kevin Lyman, he did the first 3 Lollapaloozas, and he said this one's most reminiscent of the first Lollapalooza because the bands are semi-unknown, and the bands and the crew are all traveling together. Whereas the subsequent Lollapalooza tours, they had everybody said, the venue was like this. They said, well, you go to the next venue, and we'll see you there. And everybody had to get their own transportation. But now we're in a big caravan with buses. You get there, we all eat our cereal in the morning together, and get out, Yeah, a lot of camaraderie. We had a bus that broke down, so we had to split up. A bunch of people and overpack our buses and stuff. And it was really neat because every day it's like you're almost forced to meet people and stuff. And it's really neat. So nobody gets the complex.
What makes the hardcore music something that goes with skating? Like, what is it about?
Well, yeah, it's an aggressive sport. Yeah. Aggressive attitudes. Needed. Slamming down on the masonry. You ever see Salva when he slams? He goes, sometimes. I go and kick back up on the thing with them and just check it out. I don't drop in when they're doing it, but I guess I'm gonna have a big lesson from Remy Stratton. Yeah. I got a lesson from John. He came up and gave me his bike, and I went up and I went down quicker than I went up. Yeah, it's nothing. Never know. Not much. I'd do it again. You're kidding. What for? What's up there? If they put a beer up there, I will. Alright.
Why don't you guys tell me about the video that's playing on MTV now? Just a little bit about it.
Well, it's produced by a man named Ron Jeremy. Very, very fine actor, right? He's a bum. Yeah, he's pretty much a bum out. He's a bum out. We don't like to hang out with him too much anymore. But anyways, he produced it, and yeah, I think he did a fabulous job. For 2,000 bucks, you can't make a better video.
Are people going to misunderstand it, you think?
Most likely. Yeah, it was pretty much just a joke. Yeah, whatever. Everyone was capping on us for promoting the dairy thing, so we figured, all right, here you go, here's some promotion. If I could write more songs like that to make people at least get off their butt and think about something. Yeah, you should sure. Yeah, I'd do more. But it certainly wasn't one of those songs where you reach down into your soul and try to make a statement. Sorry.
No. You have to make a statement with each song. And what are you guys doing after this?
I don't know, I just left the studio, I think. We do have a record by Christmas again. Again, I don't know. We're gonna be good boys and get right back on it. We're probably gonna be back on the road, knowing our bosses, knowing our management. We'll be back out on the road. That's where we like to be, though. We stay out of trouble out here. Yeah, we're occupied. When we go home, it's like we find other things to do, because usually we don't get together and jam, because we've been jamming all the time, so like we're all spread apart and do our own things.
You think you participate in another festival kind of thing again, or is this?
Oh, absolutely. This is definitely one of the ways to go. I mean, this is the first time we've ever been on a real live tour bus. I mean, we've always been in our little van with the dogs and everything else crammed on there. Now we got the bus, we got the videos. It's cool. Yeah, I'd like to do more of this stuff. Absolutely.
Well, thank you guys.
Thank you.
Anything else you want to say?
I'm just going to be plain old Albert when we get back.